All lovely and clean. Haters gonna hate from the body shop techs. Microfibers, wonderful things. And professionally masked. Right, we are back. Yes, working on the Mark II Marina in my garage workshop. Now, I have videoed quite a lot of stuff over the last few weeks, and annoyingly, I've had a few technical difficulties. And some of the audio came out, some of it didn't. So, this is basically going to be, I don't know. Okay, prep work that I have completed already on the car. I got the engine bay into epoxy primer. I had a little bit of an issue when spraying it. I didn't put quite enough reducer, and that was my fault. It went on quite thick. It didn't run, which is great, but it did the kind of opposite, where it laid on really thick. It set nicely, it shrunk up really well, but it left it quite mottled, quite orange peely, which is not the finish I'm going for. And I'm pleased in a way that it did it on the engine bay, because I can fix that and rectify how I'm going to mix the paint or mix the epoxy for the next time. So what went wrong? Well, the epoxy I'm using is a 2K epoxy primer, so it's used in a 4:1. It's actually 4:1 and 25% reducer. I'm using a normal reducer, it's not a fast reducer, because we want to make sure those solvents have time to come through. I'm not in a rush, so we can actually give time to each stage of the prep work. Dogs. Okay, so I painted a coat of epoxy over this about 2 days ago, and it was a little bit mottled. It wasn't very, I don't think I'd used enough reducer on it anyway. But after 24 hours, you've got to scuff this up anyway to get it to take another coating of whether it be epoxy, whatever. So that's what I'm doing now. So that's all good. The bulkhead's nice and flat. I did use a bit of what's it called? Dry coat on that, just to sort of see. You can see the remains of it there, actually, to get that down. These areas, that's flat over there, that needs flatting, that's flat, that's almost there. Nice and flat before we can then put the high build primer on it, which will then need blocking out again. You don't have to, it's under the engine bay. It won't get seen, but I want to make it look good, and I keep saying that on this engine bay. I do want to make it look good, and I'm absolutely amazed at how well the epoxy does cover when it is actually on there, how flat it looks. You know, any sort of little rust where I've treated it, it's literally just been filled in, there's no more pitting, you can't see that anymore. So really impressed with it so far. Just a little bit extra work to do so I can get another coat on it, then get some high build on it, leave that to soak for 4 days or so, and then block it all out. It's good, it's good. So I'll see you when I've finished, because you lucky people, go make yourself a cup of tea, I'll finish this, you just sit there. A few things you need to know, which is all, this prep on this engine bay is exactly the same way I'm going to attack the rest of the car. So, materials you need. Hold on. Right, materials you'll need. So, now this is taking a car that's 40, 50 years old. We're taking the original paint and assessed it. You can look at my previous video where I assessed the whole entire car to see where areas needed some rectification work. The car is painted in a very old single stage metallic, which had issues from the factories. See, some people would say you'd need to go back to bare metal. I disagree. You don't need to go back to bare metal unless you're unless you've got loads of layers of paint over years and years and years of different resprays, and it's got, you know, thicker and thicker as time's gone on, and you're not too sure what your original substrate is and what you're dealing with. You do not need to go back down to bare metal everywhere. So on the car, in the previous video, I found little imperfections in the paint which I called spiders. Now these are on the metal, on top of the metal, under the paint and under the primer. Areas that I would look at are going to be where the spidering is. I would use a strip disc. I wouldn't use a chemical stripper. I'd use chemical strippers for large area panels if I had lots and lots of layers of paint which I wanted to get rid of, but strip discs will go through paint, through primer and through filler, and will get you back down to bare metal extremely quickly. Lots of people out here today. Go away. Filming. Bye. Right, and using the strip disc carefully, you will not create enough heat to warp those panels. I have strip disced this in certain areas where I found these spiders, and also I found filler in the top of the driver's side wing, which I was not expecting. Yeah, so going over with the strip disc, I found we've got a few problems with some filler in this front wing. But why is the filler in this wing, and why is it going to slow me down? Well, it's going to slow me down because I've got to dig all the filler out, find out what's been repaired. Is it a dent? Is it a welded plate? And then go from there. So I think strip disc, mask on, let's get rid of this filler and find out what's going on. Had to be stripped down to bare metal. I found filler in it. I was expecting the worst, and thankfully all I found was a very strange series of dents along the wing edge, and I found that the top of the wing has slightly been depressed inwards but hadn't affected the top of the rails at all. So I'm able to get that back and square, and we can sort that out, and it won't have to have much filler on it at all. Right, so there's a high spot just there, so I'm going to take the dolly and a suitably shaped dolly underneath, find where that is, just gently shouldn't need much. That feels a bit better. Yeah, so that low spot's going down now. Sorry, the high spot's going down. That's better. So the thing is, these are actually quite solid in terms of the thickness of the steel. So I'm thinking here, put your head up. Going to sleep. Oh, bye. 80 grit on the block. Just lightly going over it. I should probably explain something here, because I had a bit of technical problems with these recordings. So some of this recorded and some of it didn't. And the explanation to me using the grip paper on the block on the steel. So by using the 80 grit on the block over the radius, I can actually show up the highs and the lows in the metal. Therefore, it's easier to see where the highs and lows are when you then use the hammer and the dolly. It might not be particularly obvious, but yeah, that's why. And also, like I've said, the 80 grit on the bare metal, don't be afraid. It's very, very light scratches with the 80. I'm not putting any force onto the steel at all. And once I actually finish with sanding on the steel, we'll actually be finishing at a 320 anyway. Okay, now I think either side now of this is that there's a low here, and that high spot is now flat, and I've got a low in the middle, and I've also got a low onto the right side of that. So hopefully I can use the hammer and dolly the opposite way around to bring that up to get that low spot back level with the one next to it, and again the one on the front. Right, round Durablock, it's one of my favourites because it will go into those contours, because this is slightly radiused, concave if you like. So I'm just going to go across. I say never be afraid to use an 80 grit on bare metal, especially if you're going to be epoxying it anyway, because it will bite to it lovely. So now I can see some lows, but they're getting smaller, I think. There's one here, and there's one just around there, which you can actually feel. Okay, so looking at the other side, or feeling the other side, I can feel how uniform that is, top to bottom, side to side. It's still got a big low, I think, is lower than what that side is. So I think we'll just dolly underneath a little bit further up in this area here, just to try and match that profile. Now in bare metal, use your hands. That's your best tool for working out where your highs and your lows are. I can feel down there, I can feel there's a ripple, and so it's caused by whatever happened up here and here. And I thought maybe it's something that landed on here, but I don't think that's the case, because that rail there and this rail here is pretty much spot on. There's very little that needed on that. It's actually happened in the middle, happened on the side there, but obviously a long time ago, I think. So feel with your hands, you should be able to feel. I can feel a little bit of a ripple there, certainly up this top end. So I'm just going to get the dolly on that and see if we can find those lows and pull them up a little bit, especially around this edge here. That way then we don't have to use as much filler when we actually come to do it. I'm literally just pushing the dolly up into the top of the wing using the contour, because it's the right, you always use the right contour dolly for whatever work you're doing. And I'm just literally slapping the top of where that dent is to try and pull the bottom out, pushing hard against the wing. And then just feeling down with your hand. So let's pull that up. There was a low there, that's now pulled that right up. But again, it is quite ripply, but actually that's pretty much got it there. There's a little bit of a low there. Just feel. And obviously if you can, work the panel from both sides, because that'll be the best way of fixing it. If you can get to the other side, if I can find the box of dollies. Always know when to stop. There's a low there, but so don't have to be conkle. If you get the right angle, especially in bare metal, you can actually see it go down, and just flex the panel a little bit to see where your dolly is if you're not sure. But that's gone. That high spot's now gone. So that edge there. Remember, metal has memory. So if you try and push it back the way it once lived, you can do that with the right tools and patience. Hi there. There's a low there. Hi there. And know when to stop. I'm going to leave that. No, I'm going to leave that, because once we get some epoxy on it and get the filler, we can actually get a nice little coat of skin on there, which will literally sort out those waves perfectly. And I don't want to go too close to this edge, but that is a lot better. That high went down there, so that's perfect. So a little bit of a ripple on there, we can fix that in filler. Wait for my compressor to finish. I need a new compressor. It's had a hard, well, it hasn't really had a hard life. I think it's time for a new one. So I'm looking at ones at the moment. I'm looking at, because I've only got single phase electrics in the garage. Something with a really high, I like something with a decent amount of airflow, air volume. So decent CFM for me. I'm looking at some Clark ones and a couple of others. Answer, please respond in the comments if you have any, if you have one for sale. I don't know, I'm not looking for new necessarily, I'm looking for a good second-hand one, because let's be honest, let's try and save the environment as much as possible by reusing, as we're reusing old cars for pleasure. We can reuse old compressors for working on old cars for pleasure. PPE, most important. Right, always, when you're doing any bodywork at all, use gloves, and use a nitrile glove. I've started using Worth gloves, and I got these off Amazon, link in the description. Oh, it's finished. Yeah, these gloves are the best I've ever used. Now, I'm not paid to do this. I've used loads of different manufacturers of gloves over the years, but honestly, these last, and they do not, if you get snagged, they do not rip. They are extremely durable. I think I paid some like £16 for this box, £16-17 for the box, but I've had this box probably at least 2 months, and I'm still probably just about halfway, and I have been doing a lot of work on the car. So, gloves on. So I've got a mask, just for the purpose of this quick demonstration, I won't put the mask on. I have got a dust extractor on this, which is effectively just a hoover. I'm going to go over the whole wing with a 180. I've done the repair down the bottom of the A-post, which again I did record that, but the audio didn't work, so I'll fill in a little bit. But I found a bit of rot in that, which was really irritating. So yeah, all around here I've had to put a new sill end on like I did on the other side. I've just made a slightly longer piece of the A-post section here, which I'll trim up once everything's welded up. We can trim afterwards and then put this on there. Look really nice, really nice. Look at that, look at that. Made for it. Kind of should have seen it coming, but what I didn't have was a repair panel for this side as I did for the passenger side, so I ended up having to make it. What I did, cut the bottom of the wing off and then used, ignore the sticky tape, that is just holding it on for the moment, but I've made the bottom section here, that's original, that's what I've just made. Literally by hand. Only tools I used was a bench vise, a pair of grips, and that's it pretty much. That is spot on as far as I can tell. Once it's butt welded back on the wing, hopefully with a bit of filler on there we shouldn't even notice that it's been done. It's not the neatest, it's not the greatest, it's all I had at the time, but I think I've got the shapes there. It ties in lovely onto the back of that. So we'll get it fitted. It's not too bad. I wish I could tape everything together. I didn't have a panel, I didn't have a second-hand wing that I did on the other side, so I actually had to make the bottom of that. So that is all done. The front of the sill is all repaired. It is epoxied. It is sealed. It is ready to go. So that will need a little bit of filler on that. And actually, the most important thing when you're doing filler work on a panel you've made, if you're not 100% that it's an accurate copy, or if you have warpage or distortion, you want to make sure. We'll get onto that. That's not important at the moment. Stick to what you're talking about. I'm going off on tangents. Right. Oh, and ear defenders. You need ear defenders. 180. Okay, so I've gone over and just DA'd that with a 180. That's getting rid of my 80 grit scratches. The main thing with filler, and filler gets a bad rap, because there's a lot of guys out there who can sculpt really, really well with it. But filler should only be used as just to sort of get rid of a wave. Now, I'm not going for a Concord. It doesn't have to be Concord. I'm not going for a Concord restoration on this. I'm going for a just better than factory, because there's no point in me getting like every single gap straight true. There's no point in me getting this panel absolutely perfect, far better than it ever was. But I just want to make it as good as the factory, if not a little bit better. So it's better than factory is I'm going for it. That's my mantra, better than factory. These are the same pair of gloves I had on at the start. Cross my heart. Honestly, those Worth gloves, worth the price. Link in the description for where I bought them from. Honestly, fantastic things for bodywork and for mechanicals, and they make good noises. But what escalated really quickly is the front valance. It's called chasing the spider, and I chased it the whole entire length of that front panel. It wasn't just that centre section that had no paint. The bottom section had paint, but it had rust or surface rust in it, and it was those little spiders, and it was just in there, so I had to get it all off. The whole front panel is now practically bare metal. I've gone over that with an 80, I need to go over that with a 180, and then that is ready for epoxy. So hopefully the front wing, the valance, the other wing, it's that time of year again, the countryside. Yeah, so scuttle's nearly finished, this wing's pretty much done. Valance is pretty much done. The other wing is practically done, I think. But where I'm chasing spiders, the front valance was pretty much full of them. I've sorted that. The sills I think are going to be practically the same as that, so more likely than not we're bare metaling the sills. So at this rate, we could be doing a bare metal respray, contrary to what I said at the beginning of this video. But hopefully not, because it takes a lot longer. And yes, you may get a better finish, but you know, doesn't need it. Keep telling yourself that, Ben. So yeah, we're getting there. Thanks for watching, and if you did love this video, love, please tick the thumbs up and hit the subscribe and bell for notifications. There will be a lot more videos coming on the Mark II restoration. There'll also be more videos coming on Ben's car stories, where I take either my Marina Turbo out for a drive and chat to you about something that I've remembered or car related, or even possibly take another car out for a drive. We might even be taking the wife's Z3 out, which would be very special, and if I'm allowed to do that. But that would be pretty cool. And yeah, any other cars that people want to chuck at me to drive, I'm not a historian of cars. I won't tell you about the car necessarily, but I might tell you a good yarn. So until next time, I'm going to carry on with this, and then I'm going to carry on with that and that and that and that and that and that. Oh yeah, and find a new compressor at the same time. So take care. I'm not trying to hide anything on this car. It's warts and all, whatever happens. And that is gospel. That's pretty good, that. Does create a lot of dust.